We're going to talk about feast days. That seems one of the topics among Adventist people today. We take the Bible just as it reads. It is an infallible book. We have a lot of people that are claiming that the Bible isn't inspired and this and that and the other thing. But we know from inspiration that the book is inspired. I'm going to read on page 117 in the 58th Great Controversy. It says, well, while other books might be destroyed, this holy book was to be immortal. What's that word mean, immortal? Never ending.
It cannot die.
Never ending, yes. And the same with the message that we have learned. We're learning the message from the original books. And I find this in the number 30 of the original testimony, and it's on page 104. Ministers who have preached the truth with all zeal and earnestness may apostatize and join the ranks of our enemies, but this does not turn the truth of God into a lie. Nevertheless, says the apostle, the foundation of God standeth sure. The faith and failings of men may change, but the truth of God never. The third angel's message is sounded. It is infallible. It's something we can hang on to. But, as I have said, we have to find it from the original writings. We can't go to other books to find this. We just cannot do it. Let's use our Bible and see if we can come to some understanding here. I'm going to turn to 2 Chronicles, and I'm going to turn to the 34th chapter. 2 Chronicles, and it's chapter 34, and I'm going to read verse 14 first. And I'll include verse 21 and a little on. And when they brought out the money that were brought into the house of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of the Lord given by Moses. Now, the margin gives us a little clue there. It says given by Moses, or it's a supplies word. Given is supplied. So I'm going to read it this way. Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of the Lord by Moses. That was the book that Moses wrote and put in the side of the ark. That was not inside the ark. Now, let me go down to verse 21. Go inquire of the Lord for me, and for them that are left in Israel, and in Judah, concerning the words of the book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is poured out upon us, because our fathers have not kept the words of the Lord to do after all that is written in this book. It was, to the Jews, probably as important as the law of God. Not equal, but the importance of that law. I have a quotation. I'm not sure I can find that quotation here now. Let me just take a quick little look at Volume 2, Spirit of Prophecy. I'm quite sure that I don't have this, but it refers to the law, the civil law. That is a law that is given to Israel, a civil law. Yeah, it's book 3. I don't have the book. And I think we'll look on 266 if you'd like to look at that. Let me look at verse 26. Let me see now. And as for the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, so shall ye say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel concerning the words which thou hast heard. Because thine heart was tender, and thou didst humble thyself before God, when thou heardest his word against this place, and against the inhabitants thereof, and humblest thyself before me, and didst rend thy clothes, and weep before me, I have even heard thee also, saith the Lord. Now, you know, the situation here, very, very, very repentant Israel. But did they follow on? Let's include here in Isaiah chapter 1. We call Isaiah the gospel prophet. Isaiah chapter 1. Okay, thank you. And it says here, When you come to appear before me, who hath required this at your hand, to tread my courts? Bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons, the Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with. It is iniquity, even the solemn meetings. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hateth. They are a trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. So things didn't get better with Israel. They got worse, absolutely worse. Okay. It should be in my notes there, civil law. Let's go now to chapter 35 in 2 Chronicles, chapter 35. And I'm going to read now verse 6 and 10. 2 Chronicles 35, verse 6 and verse 10. So kill the Passover, and sanctify yourselves, and prepare your brethren, that they may do according to the words of the Lord, given by the hand of Moses. So the service was prepared, and the priests stood in their place, and the Levites in their courses, according to the king's commandment. We know we have plenty of evidence that those ceremonies were given by Moses. John chapter 1 and verse 15. John chapter 1 and verse 15. I'm going to include to verse 17. John bare witness of him, and cried, saying, This was he whom I spake. He that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. There is a Bible verse we have, and it's Psalms 119, and it's 142. I'm quite sure that you'll understand now what grace and truth came by Christ. Psalms 119, 142. Okay, here I go. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. We understand that Christ was the one that spoke the law from Sinai. Moses repeated that law given by Moses, and it was recorded in the book and set on the side of the ark. We understand very, very carefully now. There is a transition. What I mean by the transition, there was a change. Let's turn to Hebrews chapter 8. This is probably a portion that we don't really understand. Hebrews chapter 8, beginning with verse 5. This is a very important chapter. Who serveth unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. That now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, that saith the Lord, when I will I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the days when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind, and write them upon their hearts, and will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. This is a real transition that Christ effected when after he hung on the cross. And actually, even before, when the Lord's Supper was instituted, that the new covenant was also instituted. I'm reading now from the Present Truth article, and it's number 2. And I'm reading on page 10. Whiting, in his translation, reads, now this verse is found in 2 Chronicles 2, verse 16. Whiting's translation reads, Sabbaths, which makes the text simple and plain. All that the apostle has mentioned, such as new moons and Sabbaths, were shadows which ceased when they reached the body at the introduction of the new covenant. That's what we just read. Now let me see if I can get one more in a book before I put this down. Number 6, present truth articles number 6. Remember the quotation I read just to begin with. The angel's message is infallible. You cannot change it. I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel. See Malachi 4, 1-4. For these scriptures we see that we are not only directed to the law of Moses, but a positive injunction is laid upon us to remember it, not to keep it, but its ordinances were nailed to the cross. But its types and shadows, as St. Paul has taught, were figures of the true. They were a true, they were a true representation of the good things to come, connected with the administration of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary. Therefore, they are our positive and only sure guide contained in the articles of truth. I'm sure that was oracles of truth. To lead us to the correct understanding of the work of Christ in the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched and now man. It's we're heading for a new experience here. Let's go now to Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, and I'm going to read verse 16. This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and into their minds will I write them. That is the basis of the new covenant, that God is going to write His laws into our hearts and into our minds. Let's go back now to Colossians chapter 2. Colossians chapter 2. Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. And having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. You see that word "in it"? Notice your margin there. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of the Sabbath. We know that days has been supplied, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. So when the body appeared, the shadow disappeared. Now I think one verse in the Old Testament would be appropriate. Let's see. Let's go back to Ephesians chapter 2 first. Ephesians 2 and verse 15. Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain a new man, so making peace. Now the verse I was going to have here is let's see now. I don't want to lose that verse. It's Hosea. Let me see if I got that verse. Still got that verse. Hosea. I'm sure. Yeah, I think I have to drop this. I think it's Hosea chapter 2 there. I'm going to go there and just see if I can find it. Hosea chapter 2. Let me see now. Hosea chapter 2. It's verse 11. I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. They were going to cease because of Israel's apostasy. Now let's try one more here. Isaiah chapter 1. I think this is the really put the top on the cake here. Isaiah chapter 1. And I'm reading from verse 12. When ye come to appear before me, who hath required this at your hand, to tread my courts? Bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons, the Sabbaths, the calling of assembly, I cannot away with. It is iniquity, even the solemn meetings. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hateth. They are a trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. Why? I have no trouble dropping those feast days and those things that are there. Let's see now. Let's get a Spirit of Prophecy quotation here. Spirit of Prophecy, Book 1.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to read page 81 and 82. 81 and 82. When Christ was the foundation and life of the temple, his crucifixion would virtually destroy it, because his services were typical of the future sacrifice of the Son of God. They pointed to the great antitype, which was Christ himself. When the Jews should accomplish their wicked purpose and do unto him what they listed, from that day forth, sacrificial offerings and the services connected with them would be valueless in the sight of God, for a type would have met antitype in the perfect offering of the Son of Man. There would be no more need of burnt offerings and the blood of beasts when the great event toward what they pointed for ages was consummated. When Christ would be crucified, the inner veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to bottom, which event signified that the ceremonial system of the sacrificial offerings was at an end forever, that the one great and final sacrifice was made in the Lamb of God, slain for the sins of the world. I think that would obviously absolutely settle our minds in this respect. I'm going to Brother John, Daystar article. Yeah, I want to read one quotation on that.
Now, the book you just read, was that Redemption?
Redemption, Book 1.
That's right.
And page 81 and 82. Yes. Yeah, we don't want to get confused about everything that Christ instituted, because we know we have the Lord's Supper. And I'm going to read that quotation just a little bit here. Review and Herald, Book 3. Let's see what we can find here. And it's page 175. Let me see now. Excuse me, I may have to change that quotation. In Book 3, 175. Good, we got that one. I'll read that Daystar article first before I read the one. And it's way in the back. And it's page 64. Now, this is called the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Tabernacles was kept 7 days, the 15th to the 22nd of the 7th month, during which all that were Israelite born dwelt in booths which were made of the branches of trees. Nehemiah 8, 14 and 15. And they rejoiced before the Lord. It was called also the Feast of Ingathering, and was celebrated as they gathered in their labors out of the field. This feast, then, must meet its antitype after the harvest of the earth is gathered. We are yet in reaping time, or rather the time of severing the tares from the wheat. When this is done, the wheat will be gathered. As to the time and circumstances of this gathering, the words of our Savior are explicit and are satisfactory. Matthew chapter 24, 30, 31. They shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven, and with power and great glory, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the one end of heaven to the other. These words are too plain to be misunderstood, and too important to be overlooked. If the personal and visible second advent of Jesus in his distinctive character as is spoken of in this discourse, it is of the 30th verse. No mere spiritual coming or manifestation answers the prophecy. It is the coming of the Son of Man. If Christ is only spirit, he is not the Son of Man. After the coming of the Son of Man, the harvest of the earth is to be gathered, and that will begin the antitype of the Feast of Tabernacles, which in its completion it is evident that extends through the millennium joyous reign of the saints with Christ. So we're going to exclude this Feast of Tabernacles because it is a type of the reign of Christ in gathering his people. Let me see if I can find this quotation here. Satan exalts, I'm on page 175 in Book 3 of Review and Herald. Satan exalts as he sees men looking to men and trusting in men to be wisdom for them. The soul that looks to men as to God is left exposed to the completion and the assaults of the enemy. And the evil one sees it to it that human defects shall mar the work of God. Satan would make the man whom the brethren look up to as to God a target for his fiery darts, and will ploy him with the fierce temptations. Though at first the brethren may not be reluctant to take so great a responsibility, if he does it, he will finally encourage the very dependence upon that he once lamented, and he will come to feel grieved if matters are not brought to his attention. He will want to understand the reason for movements made in the cause that have no connection with the branch of his work. It might be good to read that just a little bit more. I'm turning now to another page here. Let me see if I got the right page. It is 575. 575. All right, here we go. I'm going to make apology of 578 it is. In this ordinance, Christ discharged his disciples from the cares and burdens of the ancient Jewish obligations in rites and ceremonies. This is the Last Supper. Please make a note of this and read it very carefully. There no longer possess any virtue, for type was meeting antitype in himself, and the authority and foundation of all Jewish ordinances that pointed to him as a great and only efficacious offering for the sins of the world. That word efficacious means a power to bring about an effect. Now, down a little bit more in the paragraph. It was Christ's desire to leave to his disciples the ordinances that would do that for them the very thing they needed. That would serve and disentangle them from the rites and ceremonies of which they had hitherto engaged in as essential, and which the reception of the gospel made no longer of any force. To continue these rites would be an insult to heaven. Redemption, Book 5. And I'm going to read from verse 4 and 5. 4 and 5. I'm at the bottom of the page. Jesus was troubled in spirit, and his disciples sympathized with his grief, although they knew not its cause. This was virtually the last Passover ever to be celebrated, for type was to meet antitype in the slaying of the Lamb of God for the sins of the world. And down at the bottom of that paragraph, at this last Passover, the Lord's Supper was instituted. So, if we're keeping the Passover, it is of absolutely no value. No value whatsoever. Number 6 now. Redemption, number 6. And I'm going to go to page 66. After the meeting of Jesus with the brethren at Galilee, the disciples returned to Jerusalem, and while the 11 were gathered together to in the city of Jesus, met with them, and again led them their minds out into the prophecies concerning himself. He deeply impressed upon their understanding the necessity of thoroughly studying the ancient prophecies concerning Messiah or regarding Messiah, and of comparing them with the facts of his life, death, and resurrection, in order to establish their fulfillment in himself. They were to diligently trace link after link of sacred truth revealed by the prophets in types and figures representing the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. He lifted the veil from their understanding concerning the typical system, the Jews and the system of the Jews, and they now saw clearly the meaning of the forms and symbols which were virtually abolished by the death of Christ. There were no more. They were all gone.
I found that quote for you.
No.
Verne, I found that quote for you.
Oh, good, good. Okay, we got it. John found it, 266.
SOP 1.
Yeah. This is about the civil laws. The statutes and judgments given to God were good for the obedient. They should live in them. But they were not good for the transgressor. For in the civil law given to Moses, punishment was to be fulfilled on the transgression that others should be restrained by fear. So that civil law, that was something that pertains to a nation. And we do have a quotation that when Christ died, the Jews perished as a nation. Let's take now number 8. I think number 7, redemption number 7. Good. And it's page 47. Page 47. He regarded Jesus as making of none effect the law of God. But when his spiritual vision was touched by the finger of God, he learned that Christ was the originator of the entire Jewish system of sacrifices, that he came into the world for the express purpose of vindicating his Father's law, and that in his death the typical law had met its antitype. It was over. Let's go now to page 66 in the same book, number 7. He pleaded that the vision admonishing him to no longer keep up the ceremonial distinction of circumcision and uncircumcision, nor to look upon the Gentiles as unclean, for God was not a respecter of persons. Those things were absolutely over. Absolutely over. Now I'm going to use Spirit Prophecy Book 2, and it's on page 386. 386. Almost the back of the book. It was the purpose of Jesus to draw attention to the crowning sacrifice that was to be to end his mission to the fallen world. They were assembled at Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, while he, the antitypical lamb, by the voluntary act, set himself apart as an oblation. You'll find that in Daniel chapter 9. Yes. Well, just a few little words here. The prophets wrote very cleverly about this system that was going to stop. I think I referred to Hosea just a little bit ago. Let's go to Hosea chapter 2. Hosea chapter 2. And I think I read this, but I'm going to read it again. I will cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. Let's try one more. Malachi, the end of the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 1. And I'm going to read verse 10. Who is there even among you that would shut the doors for naught? Neither do you kindle fire upon my altar for naught. I have no pleasure in you, saith the Lord of hosts, neither will I accept an offering at your hand. Isn't that a frightful thing? That is so disturbing that they would go so far as to have that displeasure of God upon them. Let's find another thing here in the minor prophets. Amos, chapter 8. No, chapter 5. Amos chapter 5. Verse 21. I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. We're going to use the margin there also. Please remember that margin. I don't think I can read the margin, but please check the margin on verse 20. Yeah. Now Daniel 9 and 24 and 27. Daniel 9, 24 and 27. Daniel 9, 24 and 27. "70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sin, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy." And verse 27, "And he shall confirm the covenant for 1 week, and that in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspread of the abomination, he shall make it desolate. even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. Well, the Jews didn't fulfill that. Let me go back now, one more verse. Hebrews, again, chapter 8 and verse 7. Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 7. Okay, here we go. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place been found for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my laws into their mind, and write them upon their heart, and will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. But all shall know me, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. And I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. For this, he saith, a new covenant. He hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. Brother and sisters, do we understand? The word Israel means overcomer. So you and I have this privilege of being an overcomer and having this covenant registered on our hearts. But we have to be willing and obedient, not as the Jews were. So I hope you sincerely study this subject and come to the conclusion that I have. God bless.